Today we're going to learn about Firewise. This is a program out of our state forestry department. Some of the licensees have already taken the mandatory Firewise CE class, so you'll be familiar with some of the things that we're discussing. Today we are fortunate to have Aaron with us, and Aaron is a prevention officer here at the Arizona Department of Forestry and Fire Management. So welcome, and thank you for coming, Aaron.
Thank you for having me.
And can you give us your full name?
Yes, Aaron Casem.
Great, thank you. So the first thing we want to know is, can you tell us a bit about yourself and how you came to this job?
Sure. Long journey. My first start in fire, starting in 2000. I was working as a firefighter, seasonal firefighter for the United States Forest Service on the North Kaibab Ranger District. So that's the first start to my Arizona fire experience. From there, years later, I worked for the Prescott National Forest, also as a firefighter. Changed agencies to the Bureau of Land Management out of Phoenix District. I worked at Weaver Mountain. And after that, I worked at a couple of different smaller fire districts before coming to state parks as a ranger, and then to state forestry in 2017. So I've been here ever since.
Wow,
Yeah.
nice. Some beautiful areas you've been in.
Yes, I fought fire and worked in some of the most beautiful parts of Arizona.
So you work for the Department of Forestry. Tell us about the department and your division.
Sure. So we wear many hats on a good day, but our agency is really responsible for state trust land and millions of acres of state trust land, and providing the fire service protection and resource management for that. My specific division is in wildfire prevention. So in our division, we take care of all the Smokey Bear program for school-age kids. We do career exploration for the older kids, and then for adults, that's the Firewise piece. So we have a learning program for all ages. In addition to that, we have a patrol program during fire season. So we have patrol units that are active in our higher prone fire areas. We do all of the wildfire investigations for the state, and some little grant projects. So a little bit of everything.
Nice. So the Firewise is a specific program.
Yes.
It is designed to educate individuals and whole communities about the actions that they can take either individually or in unison to prevent fires. So provide us with a little bit of a description of that program and tell us the benefits to both the individuals and the communities.
Sure. I think you hit everything so far. But we talk about defensible space, and that's really what the course or the program is for. It's looking at what a homeowner can do, reasonable actions that they can start doing well before they see smoke in the air. So a lot of the program deals with creating defensible space. We call it the home ignition zone. And it's looking at the structure and up to 100 feet on all sides of that structure. And again, looking at what we call receptive fuel beds, vegetation management. Again, the whole purpose of this is looking at your structures and the weak points around it, looking for fire that would come in the form of embers that are lofted miles ahead of the head fire, and finding those receptive fuel beds. It could be maintenance challenges, little points of entry in and around, cracks and crevices around the structure itself, looking at your vegetation leading up to the structure itself. So if there is a fire, the intent of the program is to educate the homeowners to find the weak points in their defensible space. Again, we've found through a lot of research from recent fire history that a lot of our homes burned down from embers and from little fires that impact the side of the home that's the weakest. You might have excess building material, maybe some of your vegetation is weak or stressed, and it leads to that burning, and then again impacting the home, and then we have a structure fire. So the whole program is to look at everything as fuel and to educate that homeowner as far as those mitigation efforts that help build defensible space.
So on the Firewise website, you have several resources for both individuals, whether they're homeowners or renters. It doesn't really matter. It's still the same principles apply. And one of my favorite graphics is the house with the defensible space lines and number of feet
Yes.
for each line. So can you describe that graphic a little bit and tell us more?
That's the home ignition zone. That's the best graphic that we have. And it shows the 3 spaces and what the recommendations are for each space. So when you take the structure, that first zone is from 0 to 5 feet extended from that. That's the immediate zone. And in that area, we're looking at eliminating as much vegetation and combustibles from that structure. Oftentimes, people start working from the outside in. Really, they should be working from the inside out. And that's probably the most critical part of the home ignition zone, of the defensible space, is that 0 to 5 feet. Looking at removing as much dead vegetation as possible, taking care of your plants that are, that reside there, making sure they're pruned and irrigated, and then removing combustibles from that area. And again, it could be excess building material, it could be furniture that's not rated, it could be a mop or a broom that's combustible. So again, it's educating the homeowners to that specific zone and removing as many combustibles as possible. From there, from that 5 to 30 foot, that's the intermediate zone, where we start really looking at your vegetation. Again, we're not saying that you remove all of it, but we're asking that they're maintained, they're irrigated, they're pruned, and creating that separation. So if there is a fire, it's not going to burn with high intensity moving to the structure. You've taken care of it, you've interrupted its continuity, so make sure you have good spacing, everything's healthy. So if you have a fire, it's going to burn with low intensity. So making sure that everything is healthy, introducing plants, taking care of your vegetation is probably key for that section. And then we have the extended zone from 30 to 100 feet. Again, we can have more of those clusters of shrubs and brushes and trees. But again, the whole point of this is interrupting and managing our fuel continuity so we don't have a direct line of fuel leading up to the structure itself. So we're breaking up that fuel continuity so fire's gonna burn with less intensity.
So I remember when I took one of the Firewise classes, which we're going to talk about in just a moment.
Okay.
And one of the things that they pointed out that you don't really think about is the grass fires. So that low-lying fire that you just said was low intensity, but it keeps spreading. And then when it catches something that is just really dry or stressed, boy, that's when you see the problems.
Yes, our grasses, our seasonal grasses, even some of our invasives, those are really good carriers of fire, especially if you have a wind event that's pushing it, and if the structure is on a slope. Oftentimes, that is a huge contributor. That field type, that fine field bed of grass tends to be the major carrier of fire into our communities.
So when we're looking at those defensible areas, what we're doing is trying to make sure we have 3 layers of plants or a hardscape or something that's going to help at least slow and maybe even prevent that fire from getting to the house, to the structure.
So as you get closer to the structure, the recommendations get a little bit more strict. Again, you're breaking up your field continuity, you're spacing them out, you're making sure that they're healthy, maybe separating a little bit more, and as you get to the structure, the least amount of combustible material, whether it's vegetation or man-made products, again, interrupts that field continuity. So again, if you have fire, it doesn't have that pathway to the structure itself. So that's why that 0 to 5 foot is the most aggressive area that we try to push out first.
Well, thank you for pointing out that pathway. We don't normally think about that, but that's a really important way to think about how we're going to defend those houses. Thank you. So now we have mentioned the Firewise communities a little bit. We just referred to communities and individuals a little while ago. Can you tell us more about that program and how cities and towns and counties, HOAs even, have become part of this group, who our whole communities are taking part in Firewise? What is that program? How does a community become a Firewise community?
We've seen some tremendous growth. Took over the program in 2018, and since then we went from about 92 sites, we're at about 185.
Wow.
And that's even through that tough COVID period when no one was gathering. So we've seen some pretty significant growth in the last few years, and a lot of that is people really wanting to find out what they need to do to create that defensible space. A lot of our homeowners are not from the area. They've moved in from all over the country and may not know or have that information as far as what it takes to really live in this type of environment. So I think from just a talking point, it's one of the things I think I'm very much proud of, is that we have a really good tool for engaging community members, especially when they're really concerned about the environment and the area that they moved into. So Firewise allows us to have that conversation, and it's not an ordinance. We're not the tree police. We're making healthy, reasonable recommendations for homeowners to make and do in increments. And a lot of it doesn't take a lot of money, just effort. And if you start early, and which is what we recommend, do it before fire season, before it gets hot, and you pace it out, you will see that footprint of defensible space grow. Sometimes people wait to the last minute and they want to make change, which is great. But again, if it can be incremental, especially if you have a lot of work, that's the way to do it. We've seen a lot of growth here in Maricopa County, but also statewide in the White Mountains. The Yavapai County area is our strongest Firewise community. We have the most communities there. But we've seen growth in the Green Valley area and around Tucson. All over the state, people are concerned. Fire is not specific to one area of the state. It's happening everywhere. So people are seeing the aftermath of areas like Lahaina, of California, and those conditions could exist here. And so people are wanting to get ahead of the curve, and it's easy for us to have those conversations. Knowing that everybody, is situationally aware of their surroundings, what their potential losses could be, and looking for some reasonable solutions for that. And that's what really the program offers, is reasonable actions that homeowners can do in increments to deal with their problems.
One of the things I found really interesting when I was looking into the Firewise for community, so if an entire community, a city council, a town council, an HOA board wants to become, was encouraging that group of people to take a survey of the assets of the community, which it seems like, yes, I would want to know that, but really people don't think in those terms. So when your program is encouraging a community to survey their assets, can you just describe to us a little bit about what that is? Is it simple as just going out and saying, I have so many of these type of trucks or vehicles or fire hydrants, or is it an actual plan to assess what you have and what you might need?
Every community is a little bit different, but it really, we call it values at risk. And again, your values at risk could be different from mine. Some people might have large animals, horses and cattle. That could be their priority. Other people could have, things like cars and or vegetation that's really specific to their business. So it really is anything that has any kind of special value, and it could be, monetary value. It could be just significant for personal reasons. But again, if everybody understands that loss is going to, fire is going to impact everyone, no matter how much money you have, no matter what you have there. Everybody has things stands, to have things that could be taken away or lost. So it's looking at it from that perspective, and really encouraging that the efforts of the many are better than the few. So again, because we all have those things that could be lost, it's really a team effort, and the amount of people, the more people that we can get involved expands that footprint of defensible space. It's great if we start with 6 homes within a community of 1,000, but we really want to encourage the masses to join, because again, you create that wall of defensible space. But yeah, it could be utilities, it could be infrastructure. A lot of things can be factored into that. So it's great to get, cast a wide net and see what people's values at risks are, because it's going to vary.
That's great, because I don't think that we tend to think of it in those terms as well. So I appreciate that the program mentions that and allows communities to start thinking, not just the individuals, but as a whole. How do we need to build assets so that we can help as a group protect ourselves? So I really appreciated about that program.
Yeah.
A few years ago at my former job, as I had mentioned, I hosted a Firewise class down in Florence for licensees and for the public.
Okay.
It was very well received. I'll tell you, it was one of the most popular things we ever did, and we were getting calls about that class even into last year. People went, I remember that class, can we do it again? So I know people appreciate that class and are looking for those when they are available. It was a day and a half, and we spent the first day in the classroom learning the things you're talking about. What was really great is that last half day,
That's the
we
best part.
actually went to a structure. So can you describe that program over and what that last half day is really about?
Sure. So we've consolidated the program a little bit. So it's just the one-day class, 8 hours. The first part of that is just a PowerPoint presentation, I believe 6 sections, and it goes through, the Firewise standards and a little bit of fire science, fire history, and then we calibrate. Towards the end, we start to get everybody calibrated to the expectations of what the assessment looks like. We'll come back. We'll take lunch. Come back for some housekeeping things. But that last 2 hours, 3 hours of class is where the learning happens, because they take all these concepts that they've learned and do an actual walk around with another student asking those questions. So it's probably one of my most favorite part of the class, because you really start to get everybody looking at the right things. Because I think when you get out there, you have these preconceptions of what things should look like, or what my fire threats, or what the fire threats should be. But then when you take the class, you get feedback from others, and you really start to pinpoint, that's the problem you were talking about. We have slope as an issue. That's what you mean by this aspect. So all of those concepts start to make sense. And that's where the assessment piece, and that's what we're trying to do, is get everybody to look at the same things. So again, we can have the consistent conversation. So, but it is fun. It is the best part.
It was the best part of the class, and absolutely everything started to come together. And you realized that you had been looking at problems the whole time, but hadn't seen them as those problems.
Right.
And I want to make sure people understand the Firewise program is for rural, of course, but it's just as important for urban, because you can have your own, those fire problems can be there. And one of the things I remember is having the instruction and then going to a house, and the little gap between where the wall and the earth meet is a place for leaves to go.
Absolutely.
Now, I mean, I cleaned it because it was ugly, but I didn't pay that much attention to it. And then I realized, that's just catch your house on fire.
Yeah.
So it's really important for people to realize those things that maybe don't occur to you, even though you see them. And I really appreciated that.
You hit it on the head. We're creating a honey-do list on top of a honey-do list. You're looking at things that are not the big picture. I think when people think wildfire, they're thinking about, state trust land, Forest Service land. That's the problem. When actuality, it's the little things in and around structures. If a gable vent doesn't have screening, if you have cracks and crevices around a roof or a crawl space, gaps in the foundation, in your walls, and you see the litter, and you made that connection. If you can see leaf litter or debris there, you can have embers as small as a dime impact that area. And we found through a lot of our data and our scientific post-fire investigative studies, that's been pinch points for embers to enter a structure. So you're exactly right. And that's where I think the learning begins. You really have to have some hands to the lands approach when you're doing these assessments, but you're cluing everybody into the real causes for our structures being consumed by fire. But it comes from the little areas. It
really did. That was the best part, and everyone so enjoyed that. So first of all, that's a great part of that program. And I want to encourage anyone who can take one of these classes to please take it. It will be educational and a ton of fun. The people who are there are just fabulous. So I wanted to make sure, how would I find a class that's a Firewise class?
Perfect. So our social media platforms, our PAO, Public Information Officer, does a pretty good job of advertising upcoming classes. I know that we have a few. We had one in Cave Creek today, but we have classes almost every other week up until fire season. So social media is a good way to see what the upcoming classes are, that schedule, and or contacting us if you would like us to host a training in your neck of the woods or for your community. We can do that as well.
And I will say, as our organization at the time was the host for that class, it was fast, it was easy, it was great. We enjoyed hosting it as well as attending it. So if you are someone who can host one of these classes, and it's great, you will learn a lot, but you'll also be helping your community learn a lot as well. It's well done, thank you. And then we're gonna wrap up with one last question here. The Firewise website is huge and has a lot of resources for people, but So you can go down that rabbit hole for a long time, but
Yes.
you may not find exactly what you're looking for because you start getting interested in other things. So can you describe some of the resources
Sure.
And leave us with one or two thoughts about that resource and how to use it best?
Great. So the National Fire Protection Agency, the NFPA, is the parent hub for Firewise at the national level, and they have some outstanding resources. Home ignition zone.
Yes.
That picture. They have a poster that is awesome because you have different structures that look just like that, and also problematic challenges and solutions to that.
Oh, great.
That's one of the best resources they have. They also have trifolds that help you with preparing your home for wildfire season, some defensible space recommendation, and they also have these PDF fact sheets, and there's 12 of them, and they're already PDF and formatted so that if you have a monthly email that goes out to your community members, they're already ready for you to send out.
Oh, that's great.
So a lot of free resources. It is a challenge sometimes to go through the Firewise site. So if you need those resources and having a tough time, give us a call. We can order that, especially in bulk. If you have an event coming up, contact us. We can do the order for you and have that ready and available.
Great. That's a great help.
Yeah.
So one last thought from you as far as what you would like homeowners and businesses to remember when it comes to being Firewise.
That's a good one. That we no longer have fire season. Fires happen year-round. We just had a fire last week in Prescott that was almost 500 acres. I think with the amount of people that are moving to these areas, our fuels, the abundance of fuels that we have, our environment that we live in, especially here in the Southwest, we're always going to have wildfires. And what we want to do is, because of our conditions, we want to keep wildfires out of our communities. We want to, basically we want to make sure they don't transition from wildland fire to urban fire. So it starts with actions that people do today. And I've always said this, and I'll continue to say that the first day of any firefight starts with the actions that our homeowners do today. So don't wait, ask questions. We are a free resource for anyone to utilize. Let's have that conversation and get to work.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I appreciate the program and everything you do. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you.